Hi everyone, this is Sally. Welcome to another Colors of Hope Crafts ASMR. I'm thrilled that you're here. Today we are going to be doing something a little different than we usually do. If you've never been here before, welcome. I'm so glad you found me. If you have been here before, I'm so glad you made it back. If you like the video, please subscribe and comment so that you can hear about more videos coming up. Since yesterday was, or not yesterday, a few days ago was Father's Day, I am going to dedicate this video to my dad. This video, I am going to be knitting while I tell you about him, because he taught me a lot of wonderful life lessons, and he has a huge impact on me today. For those of you who don't know, my dad was killed by a drunk driver in June of 2011. His death had a very profound effect on me, but I want to focus today not just on how he died, but on how he lived, because that's what's really important about carrying on his legacy. Because he was a wonderful human being who helped thousands of people, and it's made me want to be a better person. Normally when I do these videos, I just kind of wing it when I'm talking, but since it's such an emotional topic for me, I do have an outline. I am going to start by reading excerpts from the eulogy that I wrote for my dad's memorial services. That's right, I said services. So you get a general idea of what his personality was like, and then I'm going to tell you about some of the lessons that he taught me while he was alive, and how he continues to influence what I'm doing today, so that I can continue to carry on his legacy and create my own, because he still influences me 9 years later. Alright, so several times over the last 10 years, my dad said to me, "Allie, when you get older, will you tell your children stories about your idiot father?" I never took him seriously because I knew he would make the best grandfather ever, and that he'd be there to tell them stories. I would like to tell you about the grandfather I will make sure my children know. And by the way, side note, I don't have children yet, but I do have dogs, and I do tell them about my dad. They will know that he loved to travel 35 countries, and the only continent he missed was Antarctica. He made sure that his kids saw the world as well. Before I was steady on 2 feet, I had already crossed the Atlantic. Thanks to his and Mom's bravery and sense of adventure, my earliest memories are toddling around the Middle East with 26 college students. The seed of exploration had been planted long before I was old enough to know its significance. He continued to make sure we saw the world outside of our small Michigan town. All three of us eventually ended up studying abroad, but even when we were younger, Dad made sure we got out. When I was almost 10, he took me on a business trip to England. We often talked about our first night there. Dad had tickets for Wind in the Willows at the Old Vic in London. I was really sick and we weren't sure I'd be able to see the show. Dad took me outside and we saw an American restaurant across the street. He took me there and said I could have anything I wanted. I ordered chili and a banana shake. Years later, when telling the story, he said he'd never seen someone get better so fast. It became a running joke that when I was sick, he'd asked if I wanted chili and a banana shake. Dad's grandchildren will know that their grandfather had the best comedic timing of anyone I ever knew personally. One night after a dress rehearsal for a dance performance, Dad's timing was spot on. My grandmother asked how dress rehearsal went, and I jokingly told her that I realized I wasn't meant for women's clothing. Dad piped in with, "I learned that at an early age." I will never know how he did it, but he knew how to make people laugh, and he did it with a special ease and hilarity that I will never forget. I often told my friends if my dad and his twin brother invented the art of being a sarcastic smart aleck, then my brothers, my cousins, and I are perfecting it. Dad always had the best one-liners. When my brother was 6, he loved to play Mortal Kombat. And one day, he asked Dad what it meant. Dad told him that it was a fight where someone was capable of dying. And then he went on to say, and of course, a mortal wombat is a marsupial that's capable of dying. Dad could make almost any situation funny. And he loved to bring history into a joke. If someone said, "Guess what day it is?" Dad would, without missing a beat, say something like, "It's Woodrow Wilson's birthday," or whatever day in history it corresponded to. I will insist that my poor children be subjected to my father's unique taste in film. My mother's first clue that he had a unique taste should have been that their first date was 7 Brides for 7 Brothers. You can bet that I will make sure that my children will one day know who Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn were, just as my father did to me. In fact, thanks to him, I'm likely the only student in the 8th grade graduating class at my school who said Bringing Up Baby as their favorite film. And I was also likely the only 8-year-old who ever said that. And who can forget the absurdity that was the Marx Brothers? In our family, the women loved Groucho and the boys loved Harpo. Dad, thanks to you, I can still name At the Circus as one of my favorite films of all time. Dad always encouraged us with our passions. It never bothered him that my brothers and I have very different interests. That's another important thing that my kids will know about their grandfather, that he loved us all. The last time I saw Dad, I asked for another hug, and he gave me a hug and kiss, just like he did every day. The only days, just like he did every day throughout my childhood. Mom and Dad told us they loved us and hugged us every day. The only days they missed were the days when Dad was out of town or I was away at school. So in honor of my father, I have a task for you. When you get home today, parents, hug your children, and children hug your parents. Tell them what they mean to you. I never in a million years would have guessed that hug would have been the last. But I'm so glad I remember it. Dad also taught me that I have the right to expect respect from my future husband or partner. And that they will love me as much as my father loved my mother. So Dad, here's what my kids will know about you. That you love to laugh, you loved us unconditionally, and would no doubt love them too. That you worshiped the ground my mother walked on, and that you worked hard to help people around the world, help people see the world, literally and figuratively. They will know the amazing, loving grandfather they have. I love you, Dad. I hope you appreciated that. Now I'm going to tell you about how my dad influenced me while he was alive. My dad was very committed to public service, as he was the mayor of our small town, and he was also a professor of political science at the local college, and he was a devout public servant. He also ran for Congress in a Republican district in 1996, and although he didn't win, it was the closest race in the state, and people have said that my dad running made it possible for a Democrat to win in that district several years later, because people realized that it was possible for a Democrat to come close. He loved people, especially my family. He was very committed to making sure that we had the best life and childhood possible. And I did have a very cool childhood. I was actually homeschooled, starting in first grade. And that continued on until we moved to Illinois at the start of the 8th grade. And during that time, it was possible for Dad to take me and my brothers abroad. And so during that time, I got to go to Canada several times. I got to go on a special trip to London with my dad. I got to travel several places in the United States. I got to do lots of theater and dance and music, and my parents just made sure that I had a very well-rounded education, and I do believe that I learned a great deal from all those different trips that they took us on. Stuff that I wouldn't have learned if I had been in public school. Well, I would, when I got older, my dad and I are both advocates for universal health care. And one thing I forgot to mention, I may have mentioned this, but I can't remember. My dad and I both had degrees in political science. So I started out as a geology major, but that didn't end up panning out. So I ended up majoring in political science because that was what I knew the most about. And that was because of Dad. But I also picked political science because I had seen that I had learned that there were a lot of laws that impacted people worse off than me, and I realized that if I wanted to make a difference, I would have to know how the government worked. So it's been very difficult for me the last several years because I know how the government's supposed to work, and I keep wanting to talk to my dad about that, about everything that's going on. My dad and my mom were staunch advocates for universal healthcare, and they encouraged me to advocate for it as well, because because I learned that without my parents' health insurance, I would have been in a lot of trouble because I have a pre-existing condition. And at the time that I was advocating for universal healthcare with my dad, it was completely legal to discriminate against people with pre-existing conditions. And in fact, people with pre-existing conditions didn't get covered, which is why I was an advocate for universal healthcare, and I still am an advocate for universal healthcare. So one thing I forgot to mention is that while my dad was alive, he managed to touch the lives of thousands of college students, because after he was a political science professor, he was was in charge of scheduling off-campus programs for college students. So thousands of college students got to study abroad because of the work that he did with various colleges and universities around the United States. And during my time in college, he actually ended up working at the college that I was going to, and every couple of weeks someone would come up to me and say, "Your dad's doing this for me, your dad's doing that." And so after my dad was killed, I made up my mind that I wanted to touch as many lives as he did, or at least half as many lives as he did, because it really seemed like he was able to help a lot of people. And so I've been trying to figure out how to help people, and one of the ways I've been trying to help people is through this YouTube channel, because I know we live in a stressful time, and people have told me I have a relaxing voice, so I wanted to use it. I also want to use it to teach people about fiber art. Now I want to tell you about how Dad still influences my life, because even 9 years ago, I tried to incorporate Dad's lessons into my daily life. Dad was like one of my best friends, and I often knew what he was going to say before he said it, at least in terms of asking him for advice. And he had a way of figuring out when I was upset about something, and he figured it out better than anyone ever has. So losing him was extremely hard for many reasons. The first way I want to talk about is there are two questions that I ask myself when I'm not sure what the right thing to do is. I ask, what would Jesus do, and what would Dad do? And sometimes those are the answer that I come up with are similar, but a lot of times the answer that I come up with is the same. Because like I said, Dad was big on helping people, and helping people was very important to him. So was Jesus. So another way he's influenced me is that little girl over there. She's my new special needs puppy. She's asleep right now. Her life consists primarily of playing hard and sleeping hard. And I don't know if I would have had the courage to adopt a special needs puppy if Dad hadn't if I hadn't been surrounded by people, including my dad, who were always wanting to help people. Because it's a little daunting taking care of a special needs puppy. Like, you always want to do the right thing, and you sometimes worry that it's not the right thing, but at the end of the day, I know that if I love her and do my best, that it will help her, and I'm seeing progress in her every day, and I'm just so glad that I have the opportunity to take care of her. And people have suggested that my dad brought Aunt Zoe to us. Another way he influences me today is that continued desire to help people, and I use this YouTube channel as a means of trying to help people. Like I said, people tend to say I have a relaxing voice. And I hope that people agree with that, not just the ones who have told me that, but those who haven't told me that. And I know this is a stressful time for everyone, and I just want to do what I can. And this YouTube channel is one way to reach out to people and try to help. My dad used to tell me, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. That has stuck with me. Yeah. When one of the last conversations I had with him, I showed him a blanket I was making for my brother, and he told me that my little hands were so talented, and that stuck with me as well. Particularly when I think about making stuff for my Etsy store, and so I feel like he'd be happy with what I'm trying to do with my life, and that is often a concern of mine. Is, would Dad be happy, and would Dad be proud of me? And people have told me Dad would be proud of me. It's something I do wonder about, because I'm not necessarily successful in terms of making lots of money, but I am successful in doing stuff that I love to do, and I just hope that I can continue to do things that I love and continue to help people. My dad and I loved to laugh and make other people all laugh. My brothers and I all have a similar sense of humor to my dad. My brothers have a quicker wit than I do. But that's just because their brains work faster than mine too. My brother's actually, one of my brothers is actually studied at Second City, and I think my dad would be super proud of him. My dad really valued diversity, and I think he'd be thrilled that my brothers and I are both working on, or we're all working on a project to help Chicago businesses that have been impacted by the rioting. I really wish Dad was here so I could talk to him about everything that's going on in the country today. Because we both loved history and had an understanding of how history impacts us today. And when I read a history book, I feel like I'm communing with that. There's lots more I could say about my dad, but I'm worried the video is gonna cut out on me like it did in my last video. So I just want to say thank you for listening. I hope you learned something from my dad and his life and his legacy. And if you like this video, please hit subscribe. In my next video, I'm going to be doing an unboxing of the June Paradise Fibers box, and that will be back to normal sounds and tingles and that sort of stuff. I also want to do a video on diversity, but since it's a really difficult topic, I'm still trying to put together what exactly I want to say, because diversity is extremely important to me, and I want to be sensitive to that topic. But thank you so much for watching. Please leave a comment and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks so much. Have a great day, and I really hope that you learned something